Welcome to the Startup Grind.
Thank you. So just really excited that everybody's here tonight. We always have an amazing interview, but I'm really excited about our interview tonight. Just want to tell you a little bit about Startup Grind, what we do and why I do what I do. So Startup Grind is a global startup community. When I started last December, which was December of 2013, we were in 50 cities and we were in 25 countries. At this point in time, we are in over 100 cities and we are in over 42 countries. And basically, we are set up and designed to educate, inspire, and connect entrepreneurs. We do that through live monthly meetups such as this. We also have an annual event that's actually coming up in February in California. It's a global event. And basically, we are designed to be a resource to the entrepreneurs educate. So you will see startup founders, company founders, you will see educators, you will see investors and venture capitalists all talking about the topic of entrepreneurship. Our goal is to make it better, faster, stronger. So I'm really excited that we have an entrepreneur or a business leader with us tonight that I've had an opportunity to get to know. Heather Dwyer is the owner of Semi-Lux Incorporated, and that is a mobile custom apparel company. Heather's going to tell us more about that company. We have a tradition in Startup Grind I'd like to invite you all to join me in. We like to make our speakers feel amazing, both before the interview and during the interview. So can I ask you all to just rest on your feet and help me welcome Heather Dwyer from Semi-Lux. I just have to say that I am wearing one of the lovely custom designed Semi-Lux shirt. So you can examine this a little more closely and just see the quality of clothing that you can get through Heather and Semi-Lux. So, Heather, welcome. I'm so excited that you're here.
Thank you.
And that we have a chance to sit down and just kind of talk about. I want to talk about your company. Obviously, I want to talk about your journey because you have a pretty amazing journey. I want to talk first about. Let's start with the basics. Let's start with your childhood. Let's talk about Heather and your family growing up. What was that like?
I'm from a huge, and I do mean huge, Irish Catholic family from Marine Park, Brooklyn. I'm the oldest of 36 grandchildren. We could start out several baseball teams. My time growing up in New York, I grew up in a very working class area, and I didn't realize till I was in my 30s what an extraordinary privilege it was to be a kid in Brooklyn and have all of the culture and access to all of the things that growing up in New York City brings. You know, before I was in kindergarten, I knew the difference between a kosher deli and the one we went to, and all the different ethnic foods and all the races and religions of people and what they brought to the city in terms of their festivals and everything else. So it was a great place to get culture, whether you liked it or not.
So would you say that there was anyone in particular in your growing up? Sometimes we find, as we talk to entrepreneurs, that there was one person or who really kind of stood out, like a lodestone, or that person that really made quite an impression that maybe spoke to you becoming a business leader. Was there someone like that for you growing up?
I would say no. In fact, it was completely the opposite. There was no one in my family owned a business. Everyone basically either worked for someone else or they were cops or firemen or something like that. But there were a lot of things that set an example for me of what I was not going to do when I grew up.
And so that can almost be, you can have the role model experience, and that gives you one pathway that we see. But then you can also have the pathway where, as you say, that's not exactly, I see what that result is, I see what that achieved, that's not exactly where I want to be. And so it sounds like that's something. So you had this wonderfully rich cultural upbringing with a very diverse background in the area that you grew up in. Talk about how that, you went into your first or your kind of a job situation where you were thinking about, okay, so now I'm an adult and I've got this job situation. Were there any interesting things that happened to you as an adult in a job that kind of began this journey towards business leadership?
I think that's definitely true. When I was young, you would basically go to whatever job was going to pay you an extra $2 an hour, right? Because when you're young, you're collegiate, that's what matters.
Sure.
And so when I was young, I was strictly motivated by the money and what the money was going to get me in terms of material things, right? Because when you're young, you're in an acquisition phase of your life. And I had some incredible teachers. I had some great bosses, and I had some horrible bosses. And that also says to a young person, that's something I'm not going to do when I'm in that situation. Sure.
So you again, it sounds like you had some influences that kind of gave you some more positioning, negative role modeling, if we will, some negative role modeling. But would you say that there was a point in a particular job that you had that had directed you towards the thought of, I want to do something different. I want to, maybe it wasn't so much I want my own business, because I know that sometimes it doesn't gel that way. But were there any experiences that you had, any working experience that you had that made you say, okay, I want to shift what I'm doing. I want to do something different?
Yes, I always felt drawn towards business, but to be honest, I didn't know how to get there. No one in my family had a business background. It was a very working class background, and I just kind of felt like I knew that wasn't going to work for me. Sure. And I wasn't sure why. Right. But I always felt like there had to be something better than this. Sure. And I was fortunate. I worked for a company where I had a great boss who was a fabulous mentor. And he didn't think he was a great mentor, but he was. And one of the best things he did is he allowed me to make mistakes. Right. And he didn't fire me. Sure, that's key. And sometimes I was a little worried. Right. But that's, as you say that's really an important point, because as a culture of a business owner, then it's almost a matter of failing your way to success. But in the corporate world, we are taught and almost trained and socialized not to fail. Like you will do anything that you can do to either not fail, or if you fail, you certainly don't want anyone to know that you've failed. But you said something to me. I'm gonna take you back a little bit, I think. But you were referring to me about a particular position that you had, where again it was the anti-role model, and you saw some folks that when you realized what they were doing and what they were making, you were just like, your reaction kind of put you in a different position. Talk about that. Sure. I was young. I was in my 20s, and I was working at a club, and there were these two stockbrokers that used to come into the club all the time. And this was, in the early mid-90s, and they'd order a couple drinks, and they'd throw a $100 bill on my tray and say, "Keep the change." And I knew back then that had nothing to do with me. They were showing off to each other, to the people they were around. That was not for my benefit. So as I got to know these guys, and they came into the club more often, I realized that they were dumb as posts. And I thought, if these two lunks can have all kinds of money to throw around like this, I'm going to knock that out of the park. So I did the only logical thing, which was to go to their company and apply for their job.
And I just thought that was so great when you shared that anecdote, because that, you said I did the only logical thing. That is the only logical response for a business leader or an up-and-coming business owner, because I think there are a lot of people, and that's where we kind of talk about the entrepreneur DNA or the entrepreneur mindset, where you made a jump from, these guys have a lot of money, they're throwing it around, I know I'm way smarter than they are, so I'm going to do what they're doing and probably do it better, as opposed to, wow, I'm getting these great tips. I think I'll just continue to do this forever. That is a leap. And that's kind of one of the things, the dots I want to try and connect a little bit tonight. As we talk about, there is a particular mindset, there is a a toolkit, if you will, that entrepreneurs have, business leaders have, that separates people or can separate people from being someone who's an employee, and there's nothing wrong with being an employee, but being content to be an employee, to someone who says, you know what, this is not working for me, and I need to be doing something different. So you applied for a job at this finance company, and talk about that journey.
So I applied for a job as a broker at this firm, and I wanted to be a financial advisor. And I thought I could help people, with their money. And the firm had an unusual amount of turnover. There were 3 branch managers in the first 6 months I was there. So even though you're a newbie to any business, that's a giant red flag. Something's wrong. But the other thing I learned in my time there, besides learning about the industry, was that I was a lousy financial advisor. I was horrible. I do not have what it takes to be a good hand holder when it comes to people's emotions about their money, because I'm very rational about it.
Right.
Which is not to say I'm always rational about my own money, but about other people's.
Who is?
We can step back and look at it, and I realized I was not good at that. But I love the industry.
Mm-hmm.
So I left that firm, and I actually relocated to the Albany area,
Mm-hmm.
and took a position with another company.
So it sounds like, even from the beginning, even from that job when you worked in a club, you were able to be in the situation, and even though you may not have had a set-in-stone plan, because we know some folks do, right? They're like, I'm going to go to college, and this is what I'm going to do, and this is the type of career I'm going to have. Doesn't sound like that's the pathway that you had. Really doesn't sound like that is, as I've had the opportunity to interview, 12 business leaders, it often, I don't think I've had one person that said, yep, I knew I was going to be an entrepreneur, and this is the pathway that I was going to take. But there was an intuitive leap that you made in that I can do what they're doing, and I can do it better. So you joined an industry that you didn't know anything about, and then you were able to be in that industry long enough to realize that particular position, you were not helping the people. And that's another trait that I've found with entrepreneurs. It really is about solving problems and helping people. So you made a giant leap and left where you were, not only left that company, but really relocated yourself to another company. And talk about that journey. What happened after that?
Well, I arrived at a firm in the Albany area. It's headquartered here, and at the time I was an associate compliance officer because I liked the industry, but again I didn't want to have to deal with the hand-holding of the clients. So I found out I really liked the work. It was very intellectually stimulating. My boss gave me a lot of freedom. He listened to my suggestions, and it was a great place to grow and get skills. It was wonderful. Is
that the place where you had the mentorship?
Yes.
That was the company. So again, even in that job that you were an employee, what I'm hearing is, and let me just back up a little bit and say, so you were in finance, you were in a finance industry, the industry of finance, and you were a compliance officer. So again, we're talking about outliers because you are a female in a position that is not frequently, I would say. I wouldn't. Obviously it happens, but you kind of jumped into an industry in a company and landed in a particular field within that company that isn't often given to women. We don't see a lot of women compliance officers.
That's very true. I have walked into conferences where there were 1,500 people and 20 women. In finance in general, there's only 15% of the entire industry is made up of women, and women in executive management are even smaller than that. It's rare. When I first started at the company, I went to a seasoned broker, and I felt he had made an honest error, and I wanted to bring it to his attention so it could be properly corrected. And he said to me, I've been doing this longer than you've been alive. Why should I listen to you? And I said, well, clearly if you were that good at it, our roles would be reversed. And we became great friends, actually. But it was definitely tough, and you had to get used to being the only woman in the room. and then you had to be the one to toe the line in compliance, because you're generally the person in finance that everyone tries to avoid. And that was not the culture that I wanted. And the firm started to grow, and the position grew, and I became a chief compliance officer, and I had the opportunity to really dictate how compliance was going to be viewed in this firm. And it was not going to be adversarial. It was going to be cooperative.
So you had the opportunity to really almost set the tone for that particular department. And, you know, I'm saying all this kind of going through this journey with Heather, asking her to share, because it does relate absolutely to the company that she's in now, and not just her company, but being a business leader, being a business leader owner, because you were clearly a business leader already, having worked up through the ranks. And I know that you made some major leaps. Sometimes, as a business leader, what we find is that events occur, and they again cause us. If we look at the fact that entrepreneurship is about being ready to pivot at all times, entrepreneurs don't stay. It's not a static thing. You don't become an entrepreneur in a particular. You have to always be ready to pivot. Did you find in your journey that things occurred sometimes that you really didn't have control that caused you to take a pivot?
Yes. I was very much enjoying my role as Chief Compliance Officer. I felt that I was learning a lot. And by that time I had a few staff members. I had a fantastic assistant. And the CEO came in my office when I was meeting with my assistant, and he said, "I have news for you. You're being promoted to Chief Operating Officer now, and Don, you're the new Chief Compliance Officer." And we both said no. I said, I have more to learn in this position. I like this position. There's a lot more that I could get out of this. But, I'd love to be COO one day, but not ready to do so today. And he said, "Well, some people have greatness thrust upon them, and if you don't like it, you can get to Merrill Lynch before the market closes at 4 o'clock.
So in other words, take the promotion or find another place to work.
Exactly.
So you found yourself again, really circumstances were, it wasn't something that you'd sought at that particular point in time. But how did that change you? I mean, it really, to me, it speaks to, when I hear that story, it speaks to a certain level of integrity and work ethic that you had been exhibiting, and leadership that you'd been exhibiting, for them to just appoint you as COO. So what was going on? That was like an unavoidable promotion.
Yes, I felt I was only 35. I felt I was too young. The company had grown exponentially, and I wasn't sure that I could handle all that came with. And the other thing is, it was a completely different skill set. So being a compliance officer, I dealt with the application of rules and regulations from the Securities and Exchange Commission and various regulatory bodies upon our clients and our brokers. As COO, now I had to learn people. And it wasn't rules anymore. It was how are we growing this business together? How are all these departments working together to make sure that this is a cohesive product that can continue to expand? And I made some mistakes along the way. A good thing was I actually kept a journal of all the big mistakes I made. And sometimes it was years before I realized that they were mistakes. One of the biggest mistakes I made was allowing myself to being, forced into the position of hiring lesser caliber people than I wanted to. Mm. So in other words, the difference between hiring a warm body to get the job done because we just need it done now, mm-hmm. and hiring somebody that I felt really had growth potential. Mm-hmm. And I allowed myself to be pushed by my superiors and the board of directors into that. Mm-hmm. Well, this is how much we're going to allot for it, and that's that. And what happened was we got the warm bodies, and the warm bodies did their job. But then 2 or 3 years later, the economy has changed. The firm is just growing like weeds. And now I have a staff of warm bodies and no one I could promote. No one I felt comfortable enough to put into those new leadership roles that had developed. And that was a failure on my part.
And that's an interesting, really, dichotomy as you look at that, of just, you can look at it from, let's just get bodies in there, even if the job that they perform is only adequate, as opposed to, let's take the time, and so maybe we'll lose a little bit on the front end because we won't be able to, the metrics won't be met on the front end. But in the long run, it sounds like it was a detrimental thing for the company, because now you've got this kind of self-imposed ceiling of capabilities, because there are people that are just adequately getting the job done, but as you say, are not in a position to be promoted.
Right.
And so you had, at that company, you worked a long time at that company and had made some really amazing transitions and promotions in and of yourself, and grew yourself. How was there was a shift that took place? How did that shift come about?
Basically, the firm had continued to grow and expand, and at this point I was there for over a decade, and I said, okay, I really like an equity position. I mean, when you're COO, there's only one other job for you to get, right? And if that guy's not going anywhere and you don't have any skin in the game in terms of equity, you're spending 15 hours a day making a lot of money for other people. And that was an important lesson for me. And so through a perfect storm of events, I ended up leaving the company, and I enrolled in school full-time. And I became a full-time student because I figured I should collect a little more parchment if I was going to go and hit the job market again. And after I did that, I still didn't feel ready to go back to work for somebody else. So I decided instead that I'd go travel around the world for a couple of years.
I just need to pause right there for a moment. Yeah. So how many people in this room, when they find that it's time to transition from their job or from school, make the decision, well, now, before I go back to the job market, I am going to travel around the world for 2 years? Yeah. That's anyone? I didn't have that experience. So that, when you told me that, I just was like, wow, that's so amazing. So you took time off to travel the world. And just, I want you to talk some about the places a little bit. But there were, during this whole process, there was this learning that was taking place. You were out in the world, but in reality, there was sort of a cocoon type thing that was happening. It was like you talked about a perfect storm that caused that transition. But really, there was some things that were germinating on the inside as you were taking this trip around the world that really kind of led you to where you are today. So I want you to share a bit about it's the mindset that I really am trying to get you to kind of chat about here through the experiences.
Well, I had a one-way ticket to London, and that was it. And I didn't know where I was going to go, and I didn't even want to take the time to care. So I watched them hang the Olympic rings off Tower Bridge, and I thought, oh, isn't this exciting? And I wrote a travel blog that had started actually many years before. I would take vacations, and I would be so thrilled to just, have a change of pace that I would be, 6 or 7 hours ahead of my colleagues here in Albany. And so I'd hit an internet cafe after, a 3-martini lunch overseas, and I'd say, oh, haha, you people are working, and this is what I've seen today, and it was beautiful and amazing, and this is what I did. And it became so popular that other people said, can you please include me on this? And so I felt like I really want to share this travel experience.
What's the name? What's the address for folks who want to tune into that blog?
It's called Modern Magellan. It's a Facebook page. You just have to like it.
Okay.
So that was my nickname because I was truly a modern Magellan. There's not a lot of solo females that have circumnavigated the globe. So I felt like I was being very adventurous, in setting out to do this. Me and 6 outfits. on my back and a second pair of shoes, and that was it. So I traveled through Europe, and I had put some things in place, like I had to get a power of attorney here and have all those stateside things set up. And I continued to travel through Europe and then down through Turkey and through Africa. And it was really great because there wasn't that much culture shock because I'd seen all this before in New York.
Mm-hmm.
I just had a better chance to relate to it now on my terms.
Sure.
And I wasn't in a hurry. I could take all the time I needed. And I flew to India, and I thought I was going to spend 2 months there, but I found out it really wasn't for me. So for the second time on this journey, I showed up at the airport and I said, "What's the next flight out of this country?" I have no visa, so it's got to be someplace I can buy one upon entry. And they said, Kathmandu. I said, great. So I went to Kathmandu, and I was humming the song the whole time on the plane. And I landed in Kathmandu, and I thought I planned to be there for 5 days. I figure I'd just, see the city, soak it in a little bit, and then I'd figure out where I was going next. So 5 days turned into 5 weeks. And it was the point at the journey that changed my whole life. Forever. I was at this great little guest house, and it was just one of those perfect places, like we are where we're supposed to be at the time. Everybody at this guest house was so friendly and so genuine, and we would, 10 of us, we would share meals together, and it was this great communal thing. And there was a couple there from New Zealand that was encouraging me to come and hike the Annapurna with them. And I said, "Are you kidding me? I'm from Brooklyn. I look at nature in a coffee table book."
Right, yeah.
I've never even been to a working farm. You want me to climb through the Himalayas? Are you nuts? So I met another traveler there from Scotland, and he said, "Oh, I did that trek last October. Here are my photographs." And he'd taken them with 35 millimeter film on an old camera, an old Nikon camera. And it was the pictures of the stars and the moon on the snow. And I knew I had to see that for myself because it was so amazing. And it's so remote that the only way there is by foot or on the back of a donkey, and that would probably be even a little more dicey. And I said, I have to see it, so I'm going to go. And let's just say I don't represent the typical high altitude demographic, and it was a little tough, and every 10 minutes I was asking myself why I was doing this. Have I lost my mind? I'm hungry. I'm physically in agony. I'm climbing uphill for 85 miles. There's no one to talk to. There's nothing to buy. And it's just you and your thoughts. And you're making oxygen choices, so you're not exactly going to be chatty with the guy next to you either. So I had a lot of time to think.
A lot of time to think.
And I started thinking about, okay, I've been traveling around the world now for a while. Maybe it's time that I started to look for a job. And I thought, well, that means I'm going to have to find someone to help take care of the house again. And I'm going to have to find landscaper again. And I really hope at the next place I land, there's someone there with good taste so they can buy my clothes for me, like the assistant did at the other place. And I thought, wait a minute. How come I never hear anybody else complaining about this stuff? And I thought, whoa, maybe at other people's jobs, they're not so busy flying around the country and working their butts off that they actually have time to go out and buy their own clothing. What a novel idea.
Imagine.
Imagine that they don't need that kind of support. Wow. So I started thinking about that. Wow, if I go back to work in finance, they're probably going to be located in some big high-rise or in some other suburban office park. And, okay, well, I guess it's going to be back to that. But part of me just had too much freedom, and I'd seen too much of what was possible to really want to go back.
So you saw the possibilities, and, as I find very often, again, through these interviews, that folks have, and I think it's probably everyone, you go through a thing, you experience a thing, and because it's familiar to you, you have no idea how amazing and inspirational it can be to other people. So I am just hoping, and wanting folks to understand that here's a woman who is hiking in the Himalayas. All right, obviously that wasn't something you just woke up and said that you were going to do. There was major preparation that you needed, things that you needed to buy in terms of clothing and preparation, and it's a very physically demanding journey. And you said you were making oxygen choices, so it's like, do I talk to someone or do I save my oxygen for me, for breathing? And so in the midst of all of that, you still, somewhere along the way, as you kind of reach this Zen state of oxygen deprivation, I think I'll start a business. Like, wow, that would be so. You just kind of say it so casually. And I'm just wanting folks to kind of capture the idea, because Heather is amazing, but this is also when I'm talking about the mindset, the DNA of an entrepreneur, of a business leader, that it doesn't matter where you are, but that you're taking risks all the time, and you are finding ways to create, and that's really what I found in my journey, that being an entrepreneur is all about the creative process, and doing what you do in a more creative way. And that's what you came up with, is you shared just some of that, of what went into you coming up with really what we know now is Semi-Lux. So I just wanted to stick that in there, and please continue.
Well, I never knew that I was a risk taker. I always thought that I was, I'd work for somebody else, and I thought that I was somebody that went along with the flow, which I guess just shows that I really didn't know myself very well at all. When I realized I was a risk taker, I called my college roommate and I said, I've just realized that I'm a risk taker. She said, yeah? She wasn't impressed, so I called my mother and I said, Mom, I've come to the conclusion that I'm actually a risk taker. Heather, really? What took you this long? Really? And I guess, yeah, it took me a long time to come around to that. Starting Semi-Lux, Semi-Lux started in the Himalayas. And the whole time I'm climbing up and climbing down, I'm sketching in my mind, like, okay, what are the problems with starting a business? Well, why do businesses fail? They have overhead they can't meet. They have bad management. They have inventory they can't move. And I started thinking about, well, how do I eliminate those things? How do you eliminate inventory that's sitting around? Well, you have very little of it and everything is just on time delivery or it's make upon demand. Well, how do I eliminate overhead? There's always going to be some, but, if you don't have a fixed location with, property taxes and utility bills and things of that nature, that kind of takes care of that. Bad management, well, you never know. But, so I started checking off in my head all the things that could go wrong and how I could mitigate them. And so I started thinking about one of the things that was a frustration for me in my former job was that I was so busy and I worked in a suburban office park. And I invite any of you to look at a suburban office park on a map. They are basically deserts of services, almost by design. there's never anything around them. And heaven forbid I needed to run out and buy a gift for someone. I would worry if I would be able to get a parking space, in time to come back for my next meeting or my next conference call. And there was never anything close. And every office park I've ever been to is the same way. So I thought, what can I do to alleviate the suffering of these office workers like myself? And so that's how I came up with the idea of a mobile showroom that would bring clothing and accessories to people who work in office parks, office towers, the convenience factor. Because ordering online is great, but it doesn't always get it done for what you need. Sometimes you still need to feel it, touch it, or you don't have 3 days. You're going to that party tonight and you forgot. You need a gift.
So you want to be able to. So you, and again, this is still while you're in the Himalayas, like making oxygen choices, that you're having this very methodical and logical kind of, because sometimes as a new entrepreneur, we don't look at those why things won't work. We kind of get this idealistic sort of idea, like it's going to work because I've got a great idea. And a great idea in and of itself does not a business make. So you were able to really leverage those skills that you had learned in the corporate world, in managing people, and just your own department really, and you had departments all over the world, or all over the country, and all over the world. So you were almost like little mini companies that you were making staffing decisions and all of the kind of the steps that go into managing a business, designing, knew that it needed to be a mobile thing. But how did you come up with the design of? It's a very unique look that you have. How did you in your strategizing? How did you come up with the look of and the design of the actual mobile?
Well, I wanted, originally the name Semi-Lux came from the concept, originally I was going to do it in a shipping container and pull it on a semi. But then I realized, I looked at the insurance costs, I looked at how difficult it is to move a semi, and in some places they're just, the roads don't allow for it. Mm-hmm. And I said, okay, so that's not going to work. So when I climbed back down from the heavens and I sat in a bar in Kathmandu, I opened my little notebook and I sketched out what the mobile showroom was going to look like. And I wanted it to look like any other nice boutique on Main Street, USA. So I said it has to have plenty of natural light. It has to be heated and cooled. It needs to be classy. So we're throwing up a bunch of crystal chandeliers in there. It's got to be good. I wanted people to come in, and with big windows, you don't feel claustrophobic because you can look right through it on both sides. And I wanted to sell American-made products. And that I didn't come to right away. I spent 6 more months traveling around Asia, visiting factories, having samples made, and what I saw there was not just working conditions that I didn't want to be associated with, but also a lack of consistency and quality.
Right.
And the lack of consistency I found extremely frustrating. From one factory, I ordered 10 sample shirts, and 7 came with finished seams and 3 didn't.
So even something as simple as quality control was a key. So it sounds like, in addition to the logistical and strategic thoughts that you had, and these are all things that, as a business owner or someone, I like to call them business wannabes. We're not quite, we haven't quite started our business yet, but we really want to, really, really bad. We want to be an entrepreneur, so we're a wannabe-preneur. That these are some of the things that the business aspects that folks need to be thinking about. But also, it sounds like the decisions that you were making were not just quality control, but they really came from a value-based system, because there are some folks who would have looked at that and said, okay, it's good enough. But it sounds like you really were coming from a place of value-based, what was going to be okay and what was not going to be okay, and how you came to decide that you were going to, it was important for you to have American manufactured goods.
Yes, it was very important to me, and American manufactured goods are not easy to find. A lot of people don't know that there are only 2 suit manufacturers left in this country. One's in Rochester and one's in Chicago. So there's not a lot. We don't have a single shoemaker in this country. And by shoes, I mean like a dress shoe for men or women. There's not one.
So really it's about, when we're thinking about starting a company, or, even if we have a company, the neat thing about being a business owner is always the ability to pivot and always the ability to change. And have you found, since you started Semi-Lux, that has been clearly through your journey of getting to owning your own company, there's been major pivots that you've made. Have you found that you've also had to make some of those pivots approaching, you sat and you sketched out what you thought it was going to be. How did that sketch or the ideas that you had in your head marry up to the reality of getting Semi-Lux off the ground?
Well, I had to find manufacturers. I finally found a custom trailer manufacturer that I said, look, I'm going to design this thing from the chassis up, and you're going to build it, and it has to be heated and cooled, and all these requirements had to be in there because I wanted people to come in and have a comfortable shopping experience.
Sure.
Climate-wise as well as aesthetics. And there were a lot of things where you say, okay, I have to compromise on this. This isn't going to fit, this isn't going to work. I've changed my lighting 3 times.
Okay. So it is really about not just pivoting how you think about the business, but actually in the day-to-day kind of functioning. You need to be willing, need to have that open-mindedness. So, kind of what I'm hearing is definitely it's important for an entrepreneur or business leader to have resilience, really to have value-based, not just a great idea, but solving a problem. And clearly that's what Semi-Lux is designed to do, that providing that concierge experience for people. The values and the standards are in place. So there's a lot of front-end due diligence that needs to take place. And even if you have a business and it's not working for you, that you have to have that willingness to be able to say, okay, this is what I really kind of thought it was going to be, and I thought it would work this way. I think sometimes we can get so wedded to that idea that when it shows up off the page and in real life and it doesn't work, but really being able to kind of to make that change and the pivot. What would you say is something that delights you about being a business owner?
I like the fact that all the hard work is for me.
That you're going to reap the benefits from it.
It's for me. It's not that I put forth all this effort and someone else says, "Oh, great job. This is what you get for it." Right.
So you are there's a direct correlation between what you are putting into it. Someone else isn't determining what your value,
right.
Which in a job we absolutely don't have any choice in that matter. What would you say would be something that made you kind of wonder, I'm not really sure, I don't know, I might want to throw in the towel. I think every entrepreneur I've spoken to has come to that decision point. I liken it to, and some of you know and some of you don't know, I left my full-time job last year and started, launched a company called The Word Architect. And that is something that is all the whole conversation we're having is something that I am also going through, as well as Startup Grind being kind of an entrepreneurial endeavor as well. But there's this point in the cartoons where the creature, the animal runs off the cliff, and they've got that momentum, and then they realize that there's nothing underneath them, and they kind of look at the audience, and then they go down. Have you ever had that kind of moment of like, oh my goodness,
Daily.
Yeah. Okay.
Daily. I have, you don't need a degree in psychology to interpret my nightmares. They're all very anxiety based, and I was at the men's fashion show at the Javits Center in July, and there was a startup that's doing very well. They have a great product. I think they're going to be huge. And I said, their company's 2 years old now, and I said, did the nightmare stop? Once you've got it going and you can draw a salary and things are happening, did the nightmare stop? And he said, no, they just become more complex.
Okay. So I want to make sure we leave some time for folks to ask questions. So, I think what we talked about really today has to do with a mindset, the things that go into, and everybody's journey is different, right? So you had a rich cultural upbringing, and you married that to some experiential work things, some ups, some downs. You had many, as I call them, anti-role models, which kind of steered you into some things that you wanted to see happen. But in the coming months, folks will hear more about what is going to be happening with Semi-Lux, and be sure to tune into Modern Magellan on Heather's Facebook page, and you can get more details about the trip, and you really owe it to yourself to do that, because it's an amazing story and an amazing journey that you did. But I did want to leave some time for folks to ask questions, so if anyone has any questions. Go ahead.
Okay. Thanks for sharing your story. When you made the decision to go into the apparel industry, how did you find out who to go to? For example, when you started touring in Asia for the different factories, how did you approach them? How did you find out where they were, and how did you approach them?
I started looking on the internet, and then traveling and staying in small guest houses gives you a great opportunity to interact with other people. And there was a woman there who just happened to be in the international apparel industry. And she said, oh, I can, there's a website, here's a list, and I can recommend these places. And I said, great, that was a place to start. And I would tell anybody who would listen to me what I was looking to do and ask if they had any advice for me. And as a matter of fact, the seamstress that makes all the custom dresses for my business, a friend of a friend said, oh, you need to talk to my father-in-law. He was in international apparel. And he said, I met with him and I asked him 2 hours worth of questions, just bombarded him. And he said, can I give your information to a friend of mine? She is very experienced and I think she'd be interested in your story. I said, sure. A couple weeks later, I'm house sitting for a neighbor. My cell phone rings. And this voice on the other end says, hello, Heather. This is Elena Tahari calling. I hear we have a mutual friend. And I was amazed that someone at that level would want to talk to me or care enough to pick up a phone. But people really do want to help.
Thank you.
I was wearing a Tahari suit earlier today.
Yeah, you said the nightmares are there, so what keeps you going?
I think there's something inside me that is just not ready to give up. And I don't know, sometimes I question whether or not it's vanity. Do I think I've really built a better mousetrap? Is it vanity that keeps me going? But yet I don't feel that I'm finished. I'm not ready to give up. I just feel that there's more to it that I haven't done yet. And I have more to build and more to give. And I don't know, maybe the nightmares will just get more complex, but I'll keep trying.
I think to add to that, if I may, that it's, I think when you have that DNA, that entrepreneur DNA, you're unemployable. Like, you just reach a point where, like, if you were to try and get a job, it wouldn't work. So, everything that you said plus that. So, Angela.
Your integrity is amazing, by the way. So thank you for sharing that. It's just a common
Oh,
thread from beginning
Thank you,
to
that's very kind.
when you said that you wanted to make sure that things were made in this country. That's amazing. So my question is, also coming from a working class background, did you find that you had to adjust your mindset to feel like you could safely step out of that working class identity and get into uncharted territory, or was it just like this innate renegade spirit in you that said like, hey, it's no problem, I can just go wherever I need to go and feel okay there?
I think I was renegade. I think I've always been. When I was young, because when we're young and we're trying to kind of find our way in the world, we're easily intimidated. And, when I was in college, I got invited to a high-end cocktail party. And I was a nervous wreck. I'd never been to a cocktail party. I didn't know how to reach out or how to relate to people that, would sit there and talk about, compare and contrast Brie versus Camembert and, make all these decisions when in my house we had macaroni and cheese and it was American and some bologna on the side. And I had to get comfortable enough to say, you know what? They're just people. And the other thing that I learned is that when you come from a working class background, a lot of times people have a sense that the people who've done well, they had it easy, or somebody gave them something, or they knew someone, or they had a leg up. That's rarely the case. Most of them, especially in this country, they just bust their butts till they got where they were. And when you realize that, and as long as you're willing to bust your butt, you can be there too.
What do you do every day? Do you have a ritual, or do you go back and forth about what you do? But tell us what you do to help mitigate your risk so that you're mitigate your stress level so that you're not kind of driving yourself crazy.
I find that an hour of cardio a day really helps. And ever since childhood, I've needed that. I need a physical outlet. One point, I remember my old boss and I were having a disagreement, and he said, so when you leave the office today, you can go to your kickboxing class and tell the guy to put on the mask of my face, and since I know you really want to punch me, I know that's what you want to do. And I said, every time I make him wear your mask, he charges me extra. But yeah, I think for me, a physical outlet is really necessary. And it doesn't necessarily mean I don't enjoy eating, but I can definitely overindulge on that one. But I need a physical outlet of some kind. And I also need some time to just sit there when it's quiet and do the kind of moment and just feel centered.
Anyone else? In the back?
There was a company up in Glens Falls that made shirts for over 150 years, custom made, called Troy Good shirts. And when you buy cotton, you have to get it dyed. And the only dye manufacturers that are left are in Japan. Japan put the squeeze on all the shirt manufacturers in the United States. Basically put them out of business. Don't know if that was a conspiracy or what, but they went out of business. Lately, if you go to Glenn Beck's website, he is now manufacturing Levi's. He himself started a company to make Levi's. And he found the looms and the company that actually make the denim back in the 1800s. That's still in business today. When I buy a pair of Levi's from Walmart, made in Japan, made in China, guaranteed that those pants will wear out in 2 years. He guarantees his pants 10 years, but you're going to pay for it.
Yes.
He started at $150 a pair of pants. But people that know quality are going to buy it. So who knows what the truth is and what direction they're going to.
Anyone else? John?
For your inspiration, because I was talking with Heather earlier. But I want to know, did you have like any type of business plan that you actually, because I know you said you sketched out stuff and you kind of had in your mind what you wanted, but as far as like a business plan, just laying out how you want your business to be ran and like your exit strategy. Well, I know you just made a comment say that you don't feel like you're at the point where you want to exit out of your business, but just something like I guess maybe a blueprint or something you should pave the way of how you want your business to be ran. Did you find it necessary to have a business plan?
I did. Actually, while I was still in Kathmandu, not even, when I came up with the business idea, I was in a town called Manang, and I was snowbound at 14,000 feet for 4 days. And it was pretty miserable. So I sat down in the same little notebook, and at first I did a SWOT analysis for the business. And when I came down and I returned home, I started writing a business plan, and I submitted it to a small business incubator at a local university, and they will actually review it and give it a letter grade. And that was very helpful.
Is the incubator in Albany area?
Yes, yep. I can give you that information. And it was very helpful. They gave me an A-. But it was good to know. I mean, it's whenever I present something to someone now, you kind of have to check your ego and say to somebody, all right, this is my concept, shoot holes in it. Because just going with my idea isn't going to get me anywhere. I need the feedback. Everybody in this room knows something that I don't. So you all have something to give me in terms of knowledge and experience and suggestion. And I would say, talk to anybody who will listen about your concept and what you want to do. And you'll always meet someone that says, hey, I can suggest this person. I met them in another function. Or have you attended this networking event? It might be a good place for you. So I absolutely recommend that you do that. And I'd be happy to share my business plan with you.
In the back?
Where have you taken the showroom? I know you told me, but I don't know about recently. Where has it gone? Where have you brought it around?
It's gone through, it's been at Saratoga National. It's been at a couple of other different country clubs. It's been at some private high-end apartment buildings in the area. Most of it has been, the showings have been in Westchester, which is right now where the majority of my business is coming from. The day after my ribbon cutting, I got a contract with a publicly traded real estate investment trust. And so I've been bringing the mobile showroom to those properties. And that's been helpful, but I'd really be interested in cultivating a local market and keeping it close to home if I could.
Michelle?
Well, I had the same question about where have you taken it, and I was just curious about some of the business parks in the capital region, and we chatted earlier about the possibilities. So
Yes.
I think there's a huge market for it here. I think people would definitely take advantage of it.
Well, sometimes I find that there's a disconnect between the landlords and the people that actually populate the buildings.
Mm-hmm.
The landlords are interested in collecting the rent check and not necessarily in understanding the needs of the day-to-day worker in their office park. I think what would be, obviously publicity is helpful, but the mobile showroom can be brought to any corporate headquarters. It could be brought to any private home. I've done parties at private homes. A gentleman wanted to reward his staff for a job well done, and he was hosting a party at his house, and he had me bring the mobile showroom there so that his staff could come out and have shirts made on him as a reward. So it has many applications.
Who is the tailor? I mean, how does that whole piece of it work, the custom tailoring?
The shirts are made by a third-generation family business in New Jersey, and all the dresses are made by a seamstress in New York and her team. and all the other accessories are made by other small batch designers in the eastern U.S.
I guess that was almost answered my question. I just wondered what kind of products that you had, what type of accessories. I'm just curious. What kind of accessories.
We have some jewelry that's made locally. We have ties, handbags, backpacks.
They're all made in the U.S.?
All made, yes, small batch artisans.
What I thought could be maybe the healthcare market. I used to work for St. Peter's Health Partners. They're huge, 12,000 employees. A lot of those people are doctors. I mean, that might be something, industry that you could branch out in.
It's definitely a viable market.
My question was funding. Did you fund it all yourself or did you use outside sources?
I funded it all myself with the exception of a $20,000 small business loan from the Chamber of Commerce. One thing I learned as with a startup is that when you are a startup, your business has no credit, so you can't even get a cell phone for your business. So you have to literally start from scratch, getting a credit rating built for your business. And the small business loan helps with that. Also, getting credit cards in the company name under the company tax ID number, things of that nature, to help develop credit for the business so that once you've got things going, you can say, okay, now I'm ready to go for funding.
Anyone else?
I have one more question. So what would you consider, because I'm in the process at Crossroad where I'm thinking about quitting my job 12 years. So I want to know, what would you say would be a good rainy day or a cushion? How would you come, like, I know you quit your job. Did you have like a certain amount of money that you wanted to save, or how did you go and just kind of just put those ideas in your head that, okay, I want to quit this job, or I just want to do something different, and how much money I need to save? How did you go through that process?
Well, I had a well-paying job to start with, so that helped. And there was also some things that I had to compromise on. For instance, I was leaving the country. I wasn't sure if I was going to come back. So I leased my house out I turned it over to a international relocation company. So they found all the high-end tenants that could afford the mortgage, and so that took care of my mortgage. I didn't have to sell the house and things like that. So maybe if you have a condo or if you own a property, you might want to consider turning it over to a relocation company. There's going to be expenses that are involved that you have to consider. Do you have alternative sources of support for yourself? But I would definitely recommend that there be enough money. You should be able to go a solid year.
Anyone else? Okay, well, I think that we're almost complete here. I just wanted to be sure and give some shout outs and thank you always to Paul Hook and the folks here at Over It, because they always do an amazing job. Dan Dinsmore owns Over It, but Paul is my man with his feet on the floor that always makes sure that everything comes together. I wanted to definitely thank our beverage sponsors tonight. Anyone have a chance to try the brews tonight? Those were our beverage sponsor is the IFP Film Crew. Donated that. They had a wrap party, and so they donated. They were our beverage sponsors for tonight, and always couldn't make this happen at all without my video crew, Limited Imprint. So I want to thank you, and they are always open and looking for new projects. So you can see Claudio and Stefan about that. But and you guys, thank you very much. Obviously, we couldn't do what we do without having all of you here. So thank you. Some of you I know, and some of you. If I haven't had a chance to meet you, please, before you leave, please give me the opportunity to say hi and get your business card and your information. And just thank you all for coming. I think we're done. I think it's a complete.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.